Hey, Clayton, why can a man nullify a woman's vow in Numbers chapter 30? Okay, this is a story or a set of laws about vows that someone makes and whether or not they have to keep them. Okay, now you got to understand these are what we call free will vows. These are not things that are required. They're things that someone in a moment of desperation or in making a commitment to God, they say, God, I promise that I will do this if you help me out. It's almost like a little bit like fasting. Okay, so we fast before God does something. Fulfilling a vow is doing something after God does something. So we might say, look, I'm going to go without food today because I really need you to do something, God. Someone making a vow might say, God, if you do this for me, once you do it, I will make this sacrificial gift to you. And so that's what the vow is. And so the question is, if a woman makes a vow and her husband or father hears about it, it says that the husband or the father can actually nullify and say, no, she doesn't, I'm taking that away. I know she said it, but I'm going to kind of cancel it and she doesn't have to do it. That seems really unfair, right? It seems like it's saying, whoa, you're treating all these women as if they can't make up their own minds and invalidating, their commitments to God. And it's like, this man is in control of their spiritual life and this sort of thing. I want to reframe that because this may be challenging to us, but it's actually in a different kind of context than we assume, okay? You have to remember that vows have economic costs to them, okay? When you make a vow, it isn't just saying, hey, God, I'm going to spend extra time in prayer. In the Old Testament system, if they made a vow, it meant that they were going to go to the temple and give God an animal. And an animal, you'll have to remember, is money. Okay, in the ancient world, the thing that was your value, the thing that you'd say, look, this is how my net worth, you would count how many animals someone had. And if you had more animals, you were wealthier than someone who had less animals. So if someone makes a vow and says, God, if you do this for me, I'm going to fulfill this vow, they're usually saying, I'm going to take a goat or a ram or a sheep or whatever. I'm going to go to the temple. I'm going to kill it and give it as an offering, which means you're basically committing to spend money. Okay, you're committing to use up someone's livelihood to fulfill your vow. Now, that might be a completely legitimate thing, but again, these are free will, so they're not required of the people. These are not the normal sacrifices. These are above and beyond sorts of things. And so it's worth noting that women are allowed to make vows, right? Like this is not a passage that says, women, they can't do this sort of thing. They're not mature enough or they don't have a relationship with God enough to do this. It actually says, no, their vows are binding. If their husband or father hears about it, they've got to follow through on it if they don't say, I'm gonna block that. But here's the thing about the husband or the father intervening and stopping that vow. In our society, in modern society, the basic economic unit of society is the individual, right? Like each individual has their own bank account and their own bills and their own things. In the ancient world, and frankly, nearly every culture in history and many cultures around the world today, the basic economic unit is the household, not the individual. So if you say, like, who owes something? Like if you make a promise to pay something to somebody, who owes it? It isn't the individual, it's the family. A way to think about this is every family was a small business. Every family wasn't like our families we think of as like a community. Well, they would have thought of their family as a workforce, we run a family farm, we run a family bakery, we run a family blacksmith shop or whatever. They would say, this is what our family does. Our family is a business, right? We work together on something for our own economic livelihood. So the equivalent of someone in the family making a vow would be the equivalent of someone who works for a small business making a verbal commitment to a client, but the boss not knowing about it. And the boss coming along and saying, whoa. They weren't actually speaking for the business when they did this. I don't give them the authority to make that deal, right? Like the kind of junior person in the company is talking with someone over lunch and says, oh yeah, we'll absolutely do that. And the boss has to call up later and say, actually, they were speaking out of turn. I hadn't given them permission to do that. Why would the boss get to do that? Because the boss is on the hook for that, right? Financially speaking, they've got to pay something. Now, you'll notice in this passage that widows and divorced women who don't have a male head of household, they are fully responsible for whatever vows they make. There's no one who's going to block that. Why? Because They're responsible for their own economic well-being. But in a situation where someone is a wife or a daughter, that it means their head of household, their representative of their family, is a male head of household. Now, we may feel very awkward about that, but historically, culturally speaking, that's the way it worked then. And God was working within the culture that they had. And so he was saying, in this situation, we're not talking about the spiritual inferiority of women. We're not talking about their relationship with God. We're not talking about their ability to make commitments. We're talking about the economic structure of an ancient household and how these things would work out. Now, we may not like that was their economic structure or their family structure, but it is what it is. That's how their world worked. And God was giving reasonable expectations, reasonable things to address situations that might have come up in a system like that, which is really what's going on and nothing more. Thanks for listening. If you've got your own questions, email questions@BibleSavvy.com. Like and subscribe to catch our regular episodes every Monday on the Bible Savvy Podcast.